Welcome to Practical Access. I'm Lisa Dieker.
And I'm Rebecca Hines, and we are excited about our third season, Lisa, especially this morning's guest, a friend and colleague of ours, if you'll do the introductions.
Yeah, so Becky, we're so excited to have Dr. Leslie Sena with us, who is Associate Professor of Exceptional Education and happens to be the department chair at Bethune Cookman University right down the road, which is a historical Black college and university in Daytona. And Liz, you have a ton of accolades, so I'm not going to read them all. We'll let you share them as we get started.
So we invited Dr. Sena this morning kind of to kick off this new season, which will feature experts in the field and in some cases, experts with lived experiences. So our friend, Dr. Sena, is actually a longtime colleague, and we've had a chance to collaborate over the years and certainly have lots of lunches. So I thought our insight, Lisa, would be really interesting, especially in this time of COVID, all different considerations. Dr. Sena is not only an expert in the field of exceptional student education, but she is also a professor with low vision. And Les, to be honest, I don't even know what is the best term for I'm not an expert in visual impairment. So if you don't mind disclosing just a little bit about yourself and your visual impairment, kind of, what do we need to know? What do we not know as your colleagues?
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me as a guest on this podcast. It's really exciting to have a forum to just share experiences like this for people who are interested. And as we go through, please call me Leslie. I think I'd be very comfortable with that. So technically, I do have what would be called a visual impairment. It's due to diabetic. It's due to diabetic retinopathy, where abnormal vessels grew in the back of my eyes and they bursted, and so I see flashing lights all the time that obstruct my vision. I've had multiple surgeries and everything that they can do, and my eyes have been stable for a very long time. This actually happened when I was 21. I sneezed and then pow. That was the last time I actually saw the world without sparkling lights everywhere. So if I could navigate through the sparkling lights, it's actually very clear. And I only mention that because most of what I see is a matter of perception. And I think that's a really important point to make when we talk about visual impairment. How I perceive the world is how I navigate the world. And if I have flashing lights or not, everybody's going to navigate that differently. And as a person with a visual impairment, in some cases I am categorized as blind. I have a form that I submit to taxes, right, that says that I'm blind. My doctor gives that to me. I do submit documentation to our HR department that states my disability because it is protected under ADA. So, but that's not really what people are interested in. They're a little curious about what I see. I describe it as looking out over a sparkly lake and you can still see the water, but there's these flashing lights in the way. Or people that have migraines have described a similar visual perception. They have these lights that get in the way. They can still see, but not. And functionally, it affects everything that I do. It affects my eating. I can't see my plate, really. I mean, I don't know how many times I've eaten a lemon or an onion thinking that it was a squash or something else. I don't necessarily see where I'm walking. I do have a cane. I use all kinds of technology that's been really valuable in how I navigate the world. But I think it is important that I'm an expert in exceptional student education, but I live with a visual impairment.
And, even working among colleagues in exceptional student education, I would expect, and I know we've had these discussions informally at conferences or just sitting around in our offices. I would expect that with a disability such as yours, it's not necessarily noticeable always to the people around you, whether it's sitting in a conference presentation, sitting in a faculty meeting. How do you navigate that? How do you just ask for support when you need it, or do you presume people are going to support you and then you're disappointed? What happens colleague wise? You mentioned your cane, but you don't always have that with you, and certainly when you're sitting, et cetera. So can you give us kind of the real world feel professionally about how this impacts you or how you communicate with colleagues?
Yes, it's actually very interesting, because I don't use my cane most of the time. And if you were to look at me, you would not know I have a visual impairment. And I think what's important for educators to know, and just for people in general, I use strategies more than accommodations. Like, we always think, oh, you need to accommodate somebody, but I use a lot of strategies more than that. And my colleagues forget all the time. I'm very honest. I disclose all the time to my students and to my colleagues. When we were working on our team was working on a PowerPoint presentation, we all had a turn, and we made it through the whole development of it. And then I said at the very end, I go, now I need everybody to really remember I can't see. And the whole group just started laughing. And they're like, oh, wait, that's right. I'm like, can somebody just, tell me when this is going to happen? And then what they don't know is that I'm memorizing everything. I can't read and see at the same time. So I memorize like 90% of what I do. And when somebody walks into an environment and there's something that new comes up, I've already been there. I practice navigating rooms, and I memorize a lot.
That's so interesting. And I think it's interesting, Leslie, as you share all this, that, I think one of the things I remember the most is, you got your doctorate in an era when really universal design for learning and ADA were just kind of at its infancy in discussion. And I still remember, I believe you rode your bike to the job interview. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
and that's the moment that I knew that you have a level of independence and ability to do things that I don't think we find in many people that I meet. And so, what do you think is the impetus for that level of independence, almost to a level that is really almost unheard of, as you said, in finding strategies? Where does that come from? It sounds like it's innate and natural, but where did you learn that toolkit that you have that's just kind of amazing? And every time I talk with you.
Well, it's interesting that you phrase it like that, because I think when I spoke with Becky earlier, I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't understand. It's not that I have anything extraordinary going on. And so it still kind of puzzles me. I think I feel sometimes like I'm a curiosity, but not because of my visual impairment, but because of who I am. My visual impairment is really just part of who I am. And I don't think when people think of me immediately, they think of that either. It just pops up in quirky ways. And for example, I have, how there's like people who are huggers and people who are high fivers. I have this colleague, and he always comes in for a high five, and he comes like aiming straight in my blind spot. And I have this blind spot that's about like 11 o'clock. If you were to look at a clock, it's at 11 o'clock. And he always consistently comes in there. And so I leave him hanging, right? I'm like, no, please, no, I'm not being rude. Why do you do that? Why do you do that? And now it's become a joke between us. And now he does it, on purpose. And I think, the strategies I use are things that I do to get what I want. And I think that's a very fundamental human thing that we all do. We all do the things that we need to do to get what we want. And maybe I'm luckier than most in that I know what I really want in life and what I want to do and how I want to impact the world. There's this thing, it's called the 3 Gs that explorers use, right? It's why did the explorers go exploring? This like gold, glory, or God. And I have this really simple outlook on life, and I think that we all strive for one of those. Like we all strive for a little bit of it, but we all strive for one of the 3 Gs. Some people are driven by gold, some are driven by glory, some are driven by God. And you have to know what drives you, because it helps you identify your tendencies, which helps you navigate your world in a better way, whether you have a visual impairment or not. And, there's things that come up with my visual impairment, like I don't see faces, right? And I have this wonderful opportunity at our university. I'm a faculty marshal, which is a great honor. And for anyone who has that opportunity, I highly recommend it. You get to dress up in your regalia. You get to lead faculty out. Like it's all for people that like pomp and circumstance, which I do. They get to do that. So the other thing with being a marshal is you get to sit in the room before the ceremony with your keynote speakers and all your administrators, and you get to hobnob and get little snacks and water. It's nice. So one time I'm there and there's this guy standing in the corner, kind of pacing. So he was near me and I walked over. I'm like, hi, how do you do? My name's Leslie, and hi, my name's Juan. And oh, that's great. Isn't this a wonderful ceremony? And I go on for like 10 minutes talking about the ESE program at the school and how wonderful our students are and all this stuff, right? And after I left, somebody said, wow, well, you were really having fun over there. And I go, yeah, Juan's a cool guy. And they go, yeah, we were kind of surprised that he was invited as our keynote. And I'm slack-jawed and all of a sudden feeling like a fool because I did not see who it was. I hadn't seen the picture of him and connect it to the face. He didn't say, oh, thank you for the honor of being the keynote. And, this is a journalist and a political analyst. It's Juan Williams and, most pleasant man. But that's something that kind of, I think the visual impairment did have a role in me not knowing who he was. But the fact that I went up to him and just started chatting away, that was me, right?
Glory.
Yeah. Well, you pinned it. Yeah, that's my driver completely.
I love it. Well, and you one other question for me, and then I'll turn it back to you, Becky. But you've taught. I was looking at 14 different classes. I just can't even think about the prep for that, let alone that they're both face-to-face and distance learning. So I guess a couple of things. One, is an expert in special ed, what is your advice right now for teachers with students online, no matter what the ability or disability might be? And then do you have anything specifically that people should think about for people with visual challenges in this COVID online world that we're living in right
now? So those are really interesting questions. I think that for teachers, we need to honor the student and honor ourselves as professionals. It's important to teach strategies, but practicing that and having the student feel a success for that is what's important. We're so aimed on students mastering a skill, but we have to understand that people need to fail and learn from that as well. And that's, I think that's really important. We have to trust that the student will master these skills and navigate the world that they need to. It's their world, right? And a lot of times we impose our world on their world. It's their world, and we can be there to help students by providing them with the information they need, with the protocols that they need, and knowing that what their rights are. I have a student. I have my nephew in California has a disability, and it's taken years. And now he's in high school, and it's taken years to help him understand why, how he's navigating the world. And everybody loves him. Like, that's one of his gifts, is that he's super outgoing and people just love him. But on the other hand, he does not like confrontation. And so as soon as we start talking about something, he shuts down. And that's not a service to him. We need to let him take the lead. And I think that's really important. And understanding the strategies and just being open to new ideas. I think in terms of teaching online, you would think that, oh, now that I'm in this little world, 6 inches from my desk, that it would be easier. But teaching online is a completely different pedagogy. And for someone with a visual impairment, I use the screen readers, I enlarge the fonts, I do all of that. But even, I think we joked before this meeting, it's like, oh, you need to give me a signal when someone's going to talk, because the screen right now is so far away from me. And I know that this is a podcast and it's all audio, but in Zoom meetings, if people want to see me, I need to move the computer back, which means I can't see the screen. So I just make it clear. It's like, oh, I'm going to put up my picture so I can actually see what's going on. And people don't mind that at all. That's not a big deal. What I found is that it's not really a big deal. When you develop the relationships with people, and I think this is key, it's all about developing relationships and being authentic. That's where the magic happens, right? That's where things come together. And the visual impairment, yeah, it's there, but that's what I deal with. And for you, you're not going to know until I tell you what I have to deal with. And most of the time, it's like not an issue for people.
Leslie, I especially appreciate you being willing to kind of share what you see and give some insight into what your world literally looks like, because that's kind of the point of our whole season, is to give people a different perspective. And certainly we appreciate you sharing yours. I will ask you, kind of as we get ready to wrap up, what is one specific support, a specific tool or support, if you were the parent of a child who is blind or has low vision, or a teacher, like one specific thing or tool you would provide that child, or at least explore for that child?
So there's two things. One would definitely be the technology piece. And not all technology works. You can't make assumptions about the technology. It has to be something that the individual really, really will use. I don't know how many pieces of technology that I went through before I found something that really worked for me. And then the second piece would be mobility skills. I think that's absolutely essential. When I first lost my sight, I actually went to Division of Blind Services, and I went through the whole program. It was a residential program, and I learned how to, pour coffee, and how to cross the street, and how to go shopping, and how to ask for help in public situations. And so I think that that's really essential. Services and making sure that they are able to navigate the world and feel comfortable in it. The other thing, and this is, this is more personal experience recommend, but don't make everything about being blind or visually impaired. Mm-hmm. And I know that's kind of weird, but my family still, when they introduce me to people, they'll sometimes say, "Oh, this is Dr. Sena," and then they tell my accolades, and then they whisper, "And she's visually impaired," like it's some special thing. And I think really focusing more on, like you would any child, love them, let them make mistakes, and help them navigate the world. Don't beat yourself up. I feel sometimes for my parents, for my dad and my mom, what it must have been like for them. And I'm certain it wasn't easy. Because you have fear as a parent, right? And you want everything to be perfect for your child. And especially if you perceive your child as someone who needs, right? When I put little quotes around that extra, but let them be who they need to be, right? I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does. That's beautifully said. And you know what? I can only imagine the accolades your parents can give you with, looking at your bio here, exemplary teaching award, PI on a $1.25 million grant. And I think that's exactly how we'd want to end it today with your accolades, because that's what we know you for, is as a colleague and really making a difference in the field. The other side of the story is one that's just been a privilege to get a chance to hear. So any last thoughts, Dr. Hines? You shared a lot of kernels of wisdom, Dr. Sena. I know you said to call you Leslie, but you deserve that accolade too.
Well, I'm just going to end by saying, I'll see you, Les. It was great to talk to you.
You too. Thank you again.
All right.
And good luck with the third season.
Thank you. And join us on Twitter if you have questions for us. And we hope you will share some of these podcasts with your classes, Leslie. And thanks again for being our guest.
Thank you.